Welcome back, everybody, to the Con Expo Con Egg podcast that is proudly brought to you by our good friends over at Komatsu, which have been a massive supporter of the podcast, and I can't wait to see them at the 2023 Con Expo show in March. Today, I have with me the man who quite literally rocks, Mr. Ryan Goodfellow from Rock Structures. Ryan, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, you bet. How you doing, Taylor?
I'm doing good, man. We were just chatting before this, and it's good to finally link up.
Yeah, for sure.
For the listeners listening, I mean, let's just start kind of easy into it. Who's Ryan? What do you do? How did you start? Let's get the story started.
Yeah, I don't know where to go. My dad, he had a transportation business, and all he did when I was a little kid was transport heavy equipment.
Wow.
And I've kind of been around equipment my whole life, but more trucks than anything. And then back when I was, I don't know, probably like 14, which was like a long time ago, like maybe like late 90s, actually late 80s. Con Expo came around, and they went from Texas and they went to Vegas. And Dad, being in the transportation business, he would go down to the port in LA, like Long Beach, stuff like that, and he would bring machines from the port at Long Beach up to Vegas for Con Expo from all the importers from overseas. And so I actually had a chance when I was a little kid to go to the very first Con Expo that they had in Vegas.
No way.
Yeah, so I've been going to Con Expo for, geez, I'm old, so I've been going there for a long time.
Dude, that's really cool.
It's kind of crazy to think that I went to the first Con Expo, and I want to say I was like 13 is my guess, 13, 14. So I was born in 75. I think 80.
Oh, you keep saying you're old. You're not old, dude. You got lots
Yeah.
left.
Oh, I got a lot of life left. And
Oh yeah.
like I'm like 13. I'm like 13, so I'm good. But yeah, so more or less didn't want anything to do with my dad's business. My dad, my brother, my brother-in-law, they all ran it together. And I was the young, dumb punk kid. And I was okay being that way because, we're all young and dumb and punks at one point in life, right?
Or still.
So I actually left California, went to Utah. And then like 3 years after I moved up here on my own, was working for a guy, and he took really good care of me, allowed me to learn a lot of stuff, taught me a lot of stuff. And I didn't think I was getting paid what I wanted to be, and I was getting all of our work, all the work I was doing, I was getting it for him. So I was doing the bidding, I was doing the scheduling, I was doing the work, I was doing the billing, and I was doing the collecting. So as far as I was concerned, it was like, man, why can't I do this on my own? And so I talked to a couple of my clients that I had drummed up over the couple of years that I was with him, 3 years I was with him. And I just said, hey, what'd you guys do? Would you guys use me? And they said, of course we'd use you. So I went out on my own. So that was back in 97. So I was 20, 21, almost 22 when I started. So I was pretty young. And I had the world by its tail, I was setting it on fire. And we had a good run. We had a lot of good times, and I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes. Paid for college several times over. I'm still paying for it. Still, but no, it's one of those things where, yeah, I started in 97, 21 years old, almost 22. And, here we are 25 years later, 47. March actually will be going in my 26th year. So
Good for you.
kind of cool. Thanks.
That's crazy. I mean, like, coming from having the background of, I feel like maybe instilled if your dad was in the transport business, kind of like that blue collar, wake up early and work hard. Is that kind of something that you brought over? I mean, like starting your own business at 21 and doing what you were doing, that's something not easy. So what was it in you that gave you that drive to be able to grow a business? Like that's not easy starting yourself and doing that.
Well, I think it was more or less, you know, parents, whether they think so or not, from early on in their parenting life, um, us kids, we look up to them, right? Like it's one of those things where you look up to me watching what they do, you kind of emulate what they do. And even though they may not be like physically showing you what they're doing, just the example that they're setting for you by being at work and doing things or taking you to work and showing you how to do things, that's essentially setting you up
Yeah.
for the rest of your life. And like I would go with my dad on Saturdays, we'd go move stuff around. I'd go with my dad and my brother down to the yard. The company who he worked for when I was just a little kid, he they had all kinds of equipment. They had dozers, scrapers, loaders, excavators. We'd go down to the yard, and my brother he would clean all the machines, and so I would help him clean the machines. I don't know if I really did much, honestly, but I'd go down there and help him do that. And so I think just kind of that whole that whole example that was set for me early on. I knew that I didn't want to do trucks because I just didn't want anything to do with them because it kind of been shoved down my throat, and so there was that little bit of rebellion. But as soon as I got into the excavating world, after I moved up here from California, I actually like really enjoyed it, and it was there was a lot of common sense, and luckily I'm not real smart, but I do have some common sense. So as far as I was concerned, I could figure it out. If you put me on a task, I could figure it out. And as time went along, we just kind of figured out how to do things. And the guy who I worked for, I was there every day. I mean, I was there in the morning before his guys were, and I was greasing machines while they were warming up. And then if they weren't there by the time I was done greasing and warming them up, I'd take them out and I'd set them out. If we were doing pipe, I'd get the main machine put out there on the main line. I'd go get the gravel and in the loader bucket. I'd start setting pipe out. It was one of those things where his guys were happy to have me. And a lot of times nowadays, people don't want to think for themselves. They don't want to think. I guess I shouldn't say think for this. They don't want to think ahead, right? Like if you don't want to think ahead, then you're just stuck in what you're doing right now. But if you think ahead, then it's one of those things that it'll it'll shape your life in the long run. It'll be one of those things that um, you'll never be looking for something to do if you're always thinking ahead because you're thinking about the next step. There is always something to do. Always. It's just a matter of whether you want to do it or not, or whether you want to figure that part of it out or not.
Yeah, and I think what's important too is also like in the moment thinking ahead. Totally like on the job site, like you said, like there's always something to do. And I always tell if I come to my shop and some guys are sitting around and I'm always like, boys, pick up a broom. What are we doing tomorrow? Oh, we need to bring the packer out and load the skid steer. Okay, great. Let's get that going. So we're not doing it tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning. But honestly, a lot of stuff that what you're saying too is like I always tell my guys, like, especially with the growing business, is like, think ahead, think long term, not even just in the moment, but for long term as well. Of like, okay, where's this company going? Okay, like right now, sure, I'm running equipment, and oh, they tested me, and I went out on a job by myself. Well, maybe in 5 years from now, I can put myself in a position of being a working foreman and kind of thinking ahead at the future, and not thinking for now. And I feel like a lot of people right now, they kind of think short term, they think a lot short term, like, "I want this now." Like, "I wanna be that foreman now," rather than putting in that time and understanding that you gotta like, respect and trust is something that is earned, not given, and I feel like that's something that's lost, and what you're saying is how I think as well too, and when you talk about, you're not maybe not the smartest guy in the room, I think, first of all, you're being very humble. I think you are very smart, but, you also like I have work harder tattooed on my arm for a reason because I'm the same way. And we made hoodies that say work harder because I always tell my guys like I always say this over text, guys, hard work is never goes unnoticed. And I think that that's something that you're talking about is working hard and like what's your drive for that? Like what's your drive for getting up and working hard? Is it your love for the industry? Is it your family? What is it?
It's a little bit of everything, really. It's the love for the industry. My love for my family to provide for my family. It's uh, it's making sure that I have enough work to provide for my guys, and it's taking care of my customers, you know? Like, there's a couple customers I have that, man, I have one customer that's been with me for 25 years.
Awesome.
It's one of those things where that just doesn't happen every day. You know, I got one of my employees that's been with me for 20, he's going on 21 years, you know, and it's one of those things that if you take care of people, the people will take care of you. You know, it's not only about doing a good job, it's about having a relationship with your customer and cultivating that relationship as you go along, you know, and like most of my most of my customers we have right now, um, we're going on 10, 12 years with them. And I got a couple customers that are 2 and 3 years, but the majority of my customers are 12 to 18 years. And that says a lot, you know. So it's one of those things that you really have to put in the time and the effort to make sure that your people are taken care of. And that's what drives me every day is taking care of my people and taking care of my customers, and then seeing my people, my team, take care of our customers. They're no longer just my customers. They've become our team's customers. And you know, they don't care who they get on the job. They just know that whoever they get, whatever crew they get, they're going to do them a good job. And that's what matters to me.
Yeah, that's super important and very, very crucial for anybody listening that's also starting a business or just running a business is ensuring that you're taking care of your clients. What would you like providing a quality of work, but I guess like comparing yourself to the next contractor for us, what we always say is like us versus the next contractor is the knowledge and carrying our customers through the process of like a new home build, right? And where a lot of other contractors wouldn't answer questions or help them out with other trades or this or that. That's just something that we help out with because my grandfather started this business in 1968 on those fundamentals, right? Like we're not looking, I don't care about charging them an extra, you know, $800 for this consulting fee or an extra this or that, right? Like we're all in a small town here. I mean, we're all going to help out each other. What are some things that you think that sets you apart with your clients and your business?
You know, honestly, it's quality of work, you know, and having quality people, doing them a good job. And like you said, just going the extra mile. You know, like one thing that people love about us is when we are done with a job, like let's just say a backfill, right? Like we don't need a skid loader on site. We really don't. We don't need a loader on site. We can do everything with a hoe. But we have a hoe and a loader on site almost all the time, or a skid loader. When we leave that site, it's almost like it's final graded. And I had one guy say to me one time, he was a he's a competitor. He said, "Dude, why do you why do you do like a final grade with your houses?" And I'm like, "Think about it." I'm like, "When we come back to do a final grade, how much grading do we really have to do? Right? Like we don't have to do a whole lot." So it's one of those things where let's just say we're $600 to $1,200 to do a final grade. If we can come back and we can do a final grade in say 2 hours, oh, dude, well that 2 hours right there, $600 in 2 hours, it's worth it in the beginning to have that extra piece of equipment there and make it look that nice when we're done. Because then when framers come, you know, they're working off of a nice clean slate. Everything's sloped away from the house. It's all graded out. There's no piles of dirt left over. It's nice. It's ready. The customer, like, let's just say the builder shows up with their client, dude. They're like, "Holy cow, this is amazing!" You know, so it sets the tone from the very beginning on that build process for that client and our customer. So it just really makes everything look and work a whole lot better when you do things right and you do them nice. I always tell my guys, when you're done with that job, you leave that job cleaner than the way you found it. If you don't, then somebody else will, or they'll go find somebody that will. You know, it's called pride. Just take some pride in what you do every day.
Yeah, and I always say too yeah, everything you're saying is 100% bang on with you know, like 101 how to run a successful business. I mean like And it's so much of like when you would other people drive by that house and they see like, oh, well, Rock Structures did that place. Look how clean they left that, you know, like, oh, and then down the road, maybe they're building or that builder or those other people, and then they refer and it kind of just snowballs, right? Like you do good work, work will come. And that's really important. And a lot of people just bang it out. This is what we got. Okay, get off the job.
Mhm.
And I feel like that just kind of that doesn't fly, especially in times where maybe that things are going to slow down or whatever in the economy. The good contractors will remain and stay busy because there's always going to be something for them to do. But rather than I want to what when you first started your business, what did you start out by doing? Because for the listeners listening right now, you do some really unique things. Like your Instagram handle is at Rock Structures. I mean, like the rock walls and boulder walls and Armstrong walls that you do is like insane. And that's when I first found you, and it was just like, and obviously the tools that you invest in, the technology you invest in your business. What did you start out by doing, and how did you get into these creative projects?
Well, so when I was working for this other company, um, I had an opportunity to learn how to do subdivisions. I learned how to do excavation, like residential excavation, basements, sewer, water, storm drains, land drains, all that stuff, backfills, rock walls, and so like when I learned, it was like I was pretty well versed in all these different things. And so when I started my business, um, I was pretty well known at my old company for building rock walls and doing basement digs. And so when I started the business, I'm like, you know what? Let's call it Rock Structures because I that's kind of what we're gonna do. So we did a lot of rock walls starting out, and then we would do a lot of big custom home basement digs, and those would normally have rock walls. So I would do the basement dig, then I'd come back and I'd do the backfill, then I would do all the rock work around the outside of the house, and I go the next dig. And so it was one of those things that for us, we got involved with the name Rock Structures because we are building a lot of rock walls. And then as time went on, we kind of evolved into having a subdivision part of our business. So we would do subdivisions, we do main line, sewer, water, storm drain. We do secondary water, which is like irrigation water. We do storm drains, concrete. We do all that stuff, and I kind of started getting out of our main scope, which was rock structures, right? Like rock walls and basement digs. And then we got kind of going to where the rock kind of slowed down a little bit and we were doing more basement digs. And so it's one of those things where our niche is pretty much basement digs, backfills, and then all the rock work that goes along with the house. And so that's kind of how the whole name came about, was because of all the rock retaining walls we would do. And now, yeah, we don't do as many rock retaining walls as what we used to. Like um I used to have 4 crews doing nothing but rock walls.
Wow.
And we had 2 crews doing nothing but digs and backfills. And then we had 2 crews doing nothing but subdivision site development. So we got pretty big, and then the economy tanked, and we slowed right down, and we got rid of a lot of people, and we went back to just being small, and then we kind of built back up. And personally, like anybody can go out and buy a piece of equipment, like no matter what, right? Like you can go buy a piece of equipment no matter what you want to do, like, but keeping it busy and doing good work and finding good employees, you're only as good as your employees, right? And your employees, honestly, are only as good as you. If you don't take the time to teach them and to show them and to mentor them and show them how you want things done, how, like, there's lots of ways to move dirt, right? There's lots of ways to move dirt. There's a right way and there's lots of wrong ways. And I see a lot of guys out there that do it wrong. They're not being efficient. They're stepping over like steps B, C, and D to go to Z. Then they come back, to like D. And you're like, dude, listen, you gotta take this in a process. And a lot of guys don't get that. I think a lot of times I kind of joke Just because that machine is sitting there running doesn't make it mean it's making money. If that machine isn't making money, then what are you doing this for? Do you understand how to make money with that machine? And a lot of guys don't. And it's at no fault of theirs. It's really how they've been taught. And if they haven't been taught correctly, then they develop bad habits. And it's our jobs as owners to help them to learn, because that's the only way they're going to get better is if they learn and they're being taught the correct method of how to move dirt.
So, how do you go about then? What makes you a good leader, and what are you doing for your guys and girls to ensure that they're doing things correctly?
I don't know that I am a good leader, dude. Honestly, it's one of those things where, like, I'll rip my guys a new one, but as soon as I'm done with ripping them a new one, I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfectly over it.
Yeah,
And a lot of guys will hold a grudge. I don't hold a grudge.
I pull a lot of value in what you just said there. That I can relate to that 100%.
You expect them to do things one way and they do it another way. Like, I have to pull myself back in sometimes and say, okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So it's going to get done whether they do it their way or whether they do it my way. So let's put our heads together and let's figure out the best, most efficient way to do something. And if I don't have the time to help them to learn how to do it right, or figure out what the best way is to do it, then that's on me. I just have to let them do their thing and they get it done great. But there's so many times out there that, you know, they're talking about doing all these tutorial videos and stuff like that. That's all fine and dandy, but it's one of those things that if you don't teach your people, if you don't take the time to teach your people, they will never do it the way that you want it to be done. And that's not always bad. Like, sometimes they're doing it great. But if there ever is a time where you see something and they're not doing it correctly or they're not doing it efficiently, if you don't take that time to talk to them and to explain to them why you would do it a different way, then they'll never learn. And so it's like today, perfect teaching moment today. We got this big concrete washout. It's like a big round tub. It's made out of plastic. The concrete trucks dump into it so it doesn't get everywhere. It's right up in the middle of the road, up at the top of the job. And we got to move it. So I said to my guy, I says, "Hey, how are you going to move that concrete washout?" He says, "I was just thinking I'd put the forks on the loader and take it up there and pick it up with the forks." So then I said, "Okay." Then I put my hands out like a cupping shape and I said, "Okay, if you have got your forks," and I put my hand, well, I guess I didn't put them in a cupping shape. I put them, side by side. I says, "These are your forks." I says, "That thing up there is probably 5 feet around." I says, "You got to bring your forks in to where you're gonna hold on to it." I says, "Now what's in the middle? What's gonna hold it in the middle from falling in?" I says, "Also," I says, "you come down that driveway right there, and it's all bumpy because it's rocky." I says, "What's gonna keep it from staying on the forks?" And I can see his brain thinking. And I says, "I'll tell you what." I says, "If you take that Rockland grading bucket over there and you put that thing on the loader, you go up there, you get the 210 to push that into the grading bucket." I says, "Now it has full support underneath it." I says, "If you're coming down the road and it's moving back and forth," I says, "you got the side of the grading bucket where it's going to hit that. And it's not going to bounce out. It's not going to fall off." I says, "You can bring it down here. You can see it right out in front of you because you got really good visibility." I says, "You can get that thing supported underneath, supported on the sides." I says, "No problem." I says, "You won't have any problems at all." I says, "As if it was me," I said, "that's how I would do it." I said, "But you do it how you want to do it." I said, "But I'm here to tell you right now that if it was me, I would do it like that." And those are the things right there that really help your guys to understand. If you give it to them in a couple different scenarios and you let them tell you how they would do it, and then you agree with them and then you add to it, and then you explain to them why you would do it a different way, then it starts making sense to them because you can explain it to them why you would do it something different. So I think it's just a way of doing things nowadays. You just really have to help your guys because they want to learn, right? Like nobody wants to do a shitty job. Nobody, nobody at all out there. But they want to do it right. They want to make you happy. They want to feel like they've done it right. And they're not there to screw up. And so that's where I think it's your job as a leader to show them, explain to them how you would do it if it was you doing it. And if that involves you getting up on the machine and helping them see, then that's what you got to do.
Yeah. There's a lot of value in everything that you just said. And I think you're totally right with the way that you're going about it. And then like understanding that it's just understanding that they're not there. They don't want to screw up. They don't want to do a bad job. Sometimes they just need to be shown or kind of explained as to why something's not going to work and maybe a better way of going about it. But one thing that you mentioned at the beginning that I can relate to, one thing that I'm learning as well, I'm not young, I'm 27 years old, but when I first started getting into it, 22, 23 years old, into an owner role, managing the people, I was way more hot-headed. And that was one thing that I actually still struggle with because I was born and raised by my father, who, if you were holding a shovel wrong, he'd kick me in the ass and say, "What the F, are you doing? Hold this shovel this way, you lazy, blah, blah, blah." No one wants to see a guy standing on the job site with not a shovel in his G hand, like it just blue collar, right? And I respond well to that. Like I'm people always think, you get hate online. Well, I'm my biggest hater. I'm really hard on myself. Um, and like you said, I could get mad at Ryan Goodfellow and we could scream at each other on the job site and you could argue and spit in my face. And 5 minutes later, I'm over it and be like, okay, cool. So how are we going to get this job done? We are less than 100 days from the 2023 show. That's right. We are coming up on the largest construction family reunion in North America. ConExpo ConAg is going to be here before we know it. If you have not registered yet, there's still time to secure your tickets. Visit conexpoconag.com and use the promo code podcast20 to get 20% off. That's right, 20% off with promo code podcast20. If you already have your tickets to the show, join us in the countdown to the show and comment below to let us know you're going to be there and what you're most excited to see. How did you get better at maybe dealing with situations where it's like, I could get really angry right now, but I don't know if that's going to help me. And yeah, I struggle with that.
It's one of those things where like I can be the coolest boss in the world. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm a redhead. So like all of a sudden, bam, like I switch and I'm the biggest in the world.
That's what my employees would say. Exactly.
Absolutely hate me. And I will like I'll make you I'll make you cry, you know. And then as soon as I realized that my redhead came out, then it's like, okay, I gotta chill. And then I'm like, okay, I'm over it. Sorry, this is how we need to go about it. Like, here's another example today. Um, I got all the examples from today.
That's good.
I drive up to the job and I'm coming up the driveway and my guys are moving some trash out of one spot. My other guys are up, um, you know, filling around a foundation. And one of my guys is, as I'm driving up the driveway, he's waiting for the loader to come back, and he's sitting on his ass on a 2x4, and he's looking at his phone, and I can hear his music going, and he's scrolling. And I rolled my window down. I says, "Hey,
Going through TikTok.
yeah." I I rolled up my window. I rolled my window down. I'm like, "Hey, dude." I says, "Dude, no sitting on your ass." I says, "We can't do that." I'm like, "It's one of those things where, like, if you're on the clock, you're doing something." I says, "Come over here and help these guys. These guys over here, they're placing gravel around the footing drain. Like, need to be over here. It's like, I don't want to see you sitting on your ass. So just come over here and do something. Well, I went over, got out of my truck, went over, checked on the guys in the drain. He comes walking over, and I walked over, and I kind of met him halfway in the middle. I says, "Hey, dude," I said, "listen," I says, "I know you're new here," and I says, "You don't know what I expect." I says, "But I'm here to tell you right now," I says, "that I don't want to show up and see you sitting around. As I understand that you're over here helping these guys get this stuff pulled out here at the loader." I says, "But these guys are over here working. That can sit there for a minute." I says, "Or if nothing else, this is you grab some of that rebar and take it down to the bottom of the driveway. You know," I says, "something is better than nothing." And I just told him, I says, "Listen," I says, um, "if you're sitting around and you're off the clock, I don't care what you do." I says, "If you're on the clock and you're sitting around, then I will be the first one that will tell you, get off your ass and get something done. There's always something to do." And I don't know how he took it. You know, he's new. And so, you know, usually if I butt hurt somebody, they cry and they want to go find another job. You know, and this, I mean, this is construction. And it's one of those things, like you asked me, how do I combat it? Well, honestly, my guy has been here for 21 years with me. He has seen me go from hot headed, you know, get mad at you for not doing something, to just being chill. And for the most part, I'm pretty chill. And it's those times where I get mad at you, honestly, if I feel like you're doing something and you know better. If you're doing something wrong and I feel like you know better, I'm going to rip you. But then as soon as I'm done ripping you, I'm done. I'm over it. We're going to move past it. If you want to hold the grudge against me, that's on you. But I'm over it, you know? And so,
Yeah.
like you said, like, how, how do you combat that? Like, how do you settle down? Honestly, I just think it's age. it's, it's just one of those, like, a lot of guys will get ornerier as they get older, you know? Yeah, I get really ornery, but for the most part, I'm pretty chill. I'm pretty upbeat. You know, I think that in order to have a good company culture, you really need to be upbeat. You need to be, you know, happy, respectful, you know, and show the guys that you're having a good time, and they're going to have a good time as well. You know, they feed off of my energy and I feed off of their energy. And so when you get that, all that positive energy going, it's, it's like a good time coming to work.
Yeah, I agree heavily with that, and you're right, it goes both ways. They feed off your energy and you feed off theirs, and I feel like, like when you say like, positivity and it spreads and culture and stuff, and like I find like it's just like not every day is going to be awesome, that's blue collar. Not every like when especially here the weather here, when we get into March and all the snow's melting, the leaves are off, the trees are dead. It's been gray for 3 weeks. We haven't seen the sun. That's whenever I find what makes a true leader comes out, like who can who can keep the guys motivated to keep going, to be positive. It's really important to be a good leader in that moment as well, um, during those times. But what we were saying is, the guy that's been with you for 21 years, and I'm learning now, like I go and say that there's a new type of work employee coming into it, where like there's not so many left of, guys like maybe you or I that can take a tongue lashing, and then 2 minutes later it's like, yeah, okay, that was effed up, great, all right, well, let's keep working. So there's a certain way to kind of go about it, but you're right, I like your stance on it, where it's like, well, you know what, like that's just the industry sometimes, where it's like, hey, sure you may not have liked the way I talked to you, but I got my point across. Nobody got friggin' hurt, and we're going to continue on from that, and I really like the value in that's good.
Yeah, like one of my guys has been with me for quite a while. He's probably, I don't know, probably 5 years. You know, man, one day I ripped him up and down, and just, man, I thought he was gonna walk away crying. He took it like a man, and the next day we were just talking like no big deal. And I'm like, hey, dude, I respect you for not, getting butthurt and walking off and telling me I'm an ass, I'm quitting. He's like, dude, he says, I'll take an ass chewing every day if I deserve it. And yesterday I deserved it. So I'm all good with it. And I says, dude, I says, if you ever think I deserve an ass chewing, you just go right ahead and rip me a new one because I'm no different than you. Just because I'm the owner doesn't mean anything different. Just because I'm your boss, it's okay. If you don't agree with what I'm doing, take me aside and rip me up and down. I says, and I might argue with you. I might yell back at you. I says, but I will respect you 100% because you've earned that respect from me and I've earned that respect from you. And it's just two-way street. I'm so good with you bitching back at me. I'm okay with it. Like
Yeah.
I'm a man. I can handle it. Like, and if you can't handle it, then you better go somewhere else or you better never screw up.
Yeah. If you give it, you got to be able to take it.
That's right. And I'll take it all day long. Like you can tell me how you feel about me, and that's great. And I'll tell you how I feel about you, and I'll tell you 2 minutes later, hey, I love you. I just want you to know that. I don't agree with what you just did, but I want you to know that I agree with most everything else you do, and that's why I love you. We're like family. We're like a big team, and we spend more time together, like working every day than we do with our own families. So we have to have that. We have to have that bond, right? And a lot of people are like, how do you do that? Like I had one person ask me one time, well, how how do you say they're like a brother? How do you say they're like family? Like how does that not cross the line? I'm like, dude, how do you not say that? How do you not feel like they're your brother? And how do you not feel like they're your family? You know, yeah, you can treat them like their family, and you can also treat them like their family by getting mad at them too. Like there's just that line that you have to draw in the sand and be like, hey, dude, you know what? This is where we're at. Like, we're family and we're brothers and we're going to treat each other like brothers. And if you do something wrong, I'm going to tell you. If I do something wrong, you tell me. I'm all good with it. All good with it.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. And I think that that's something that I value as well listening to because I hear that all the time. And the guys that have been with me since I kind of like, excuse me, took over a leadership role, it's like, it's funny because they always are like, man, remember when you used to like blow up way more than you used to now and this and that. But it's good because it made me a better leader. It made me a better person who I am because like I'm not blowing up every day at the guys, but I think that it's acceptable to like them to know like okay, like he's upset and that's good. And like you said, vice versa. Like guys, like pull me back in when I stray too far as well too. Like check me back. That is if you can't do that, then that just means that you think you're invincible. You're better than everybody else and that won't work well, especially for culture wise. But, um, what I wanted to ask was when you talk about you just hired a new guy and stuff, how's your like, what's your role in your business and how many people do you have working for you? And do you have people in an office? And what do you have going on?
So my role, um, I'm the general manager. My wife owns the business. So back when the economy turned, and it went down, it was like, you know what? Let's change things up a little bit because if we need some like government work where you have like a minority or a women-owned business, then we can do that a little easier, right? And so we went ahead and did that. Um, so I'm just the general manager. Um, it's pretty much, my business. She says all the time, hey, it, it, I'm just the woman behind it, but she does all the paperwork. She does all the receivables, payables. She daily, time tracking. She knows what's going on with all that stuff. And so she's very much involved. But I'm involved in the outside stuff. Um, so we've been doing that for a while. Um, I used to run a hoe pretty much every day. I'm getting to where I don't like to run a hoe anymore because I'm pulled in so many different directions that I don't have time. And if I get into a machine, it's one of those things that I don't have time, and so it's not good for my customer. So we've got 13 guys right now. We're running 4 different crews, 2 to 3 guys on a crew. We've got a couple of trucks, a dump truck and a pup, and then a semi that has a side dump behind it and also pulls a low bed.
I love that truck.
Yeah, thanks. And
It's nice.
thanks. And then so we got 5 excavators. 2 loaders, 2 skid loaders. So we're pretty well outfitted. Everybody says get a dozer. I don't really need a dozer. I don't really want a dozer.
Excavator and skid steer.
Yeah, and like us, loaders are huge for us because we move a lot of material with those loaders.
Yeah, that's interesting. We don't use much loaders. Like I see on your Instagram, you guys have loaders on the job sites and stuff. Like that's something you don't see around here. You see loaders for like water and sewer with like the cone front buckets on or a side tilt bucket to dump into the bucket for the granulars, but the loaders we don't see on like you don't see on residential job sites that much.
Yeah, well, for us, they're key. Like we could take a job that would take 2 days with an excavator to backfill, compact, to you know do the gravel inside, stuff like that. We'll throw a loader onto that same job, and we will take 1 day to do that job. It's crazy how much more efficient you can be. Like, essentially, like we can put a compactor on, whether it be a hoe pack or whether it be a compaction wheel, and we can take and backfill around the house um, in like 3 hours because we're just pushing dirt in with the loader and then we're compacting it with the excavator. And the loader and the excavator work from like point A right around, they just come right around 360, right? And they get that done. And then let's just say the majority of your dirt is in the backyard, right? Because you couldn't pile in the front or on the side yard. Well, that dirt needs to come from the backyard into the front to get put into the garage. Well, do I want to move it at 3.5 yards per bucket, or do I want to move it at 3/4 of a yard or a yard per bucket with the skid loader? So, like in my opinion, I'm going to move it 3.5 yards, right? Because I'm going to get it done 3 times as fast. And really, the operating cost on loaders really isn't that bad because they'll. I mean, I got one loader. We've had it since like I don't know. I think it had 2,200 hours on it and now it's got like 9,500 hours on. We really don't have any issues with it at all. It's been a great machine, and so like when we want to, like, say we get done with the job, we got a bunch of dirt left over. We can leave that loader there on site. We go to the next job, and that loader, like we put a truck driver in there, and they can load themselves with the loader, and so that excavator can be at another job, digging a basement or starting another backfill or whatever, doing rock work, and that loader's over at the other job cleaning up that last bit of dirt, and we don't have to really put an operator in them because the truck driver can load them. So there's a lot of times where the loader really comes into play for us really, really well. And man, our efficiency goes to the roof.
What size loader? Like 3.5 yards?
Yeah, 3.5 yard loader. Yeah,
With, like, wider tires on see, the only thing I think of is, like, if you get, like, some sloppy material and stuff, tracks are gonna float where the tires on the loader are just gonna sink.
you'd be surprised how well they work.
Yeah?
There's a buddy of mine in Michigan, and he's around the lakes. They got some soft underfoot conditions. They put like skidder tires on them,
Yeah, I was gonna say, nice wide ones.
nice big wide tires on them with the big gnarly treads on them. And dude, those loaders will go wherever you want to go because they got those big wide tires on. The flotation's great. Yeah, the tires stick out further than the bucket, but it doesn't really matter because they're floating on whatever they're doing. Picking up a pile, whatever, moving it from A to B. I mean, loaders for us were a big thing. Like I've got guys that come over work here and they're like, we've never had a loader on a backfill ever.
Yeah.
And they've on the digs they got to throw the dirt 3 and 4 times on a basement dig, and I'm like, dude, if you got to throw it 3 and 4 times, you got to have a loader there. And like their 3 or 4 day basement digs turns into a day and a half. And they're like, holy crap, we can't believe how much faster it is as well. The name of the game is efficiency. Efficiency, get done with that job, get into the next job. So it's one of those things where for us, a loader is huge. A dozer is great, but a dozer is just pushing the dirt away from you, right? It's not actually picking it up and moving it. And so that's where the load and carry of a loader really, really works out really well. And so for us to not have a loader on the job is pretty rare, pretty rare. A loader or a skid loader is on the job pretty much every single job we do.
Yeah, skid loaders on the job for us on everyone, but I mean, that's even got me thinking. I mean, like that is I mean, the only thing I can think of is like do you deal in a lot of because you're in northern Utah, correct?
Yep.
Like, do you have a lot of like treed lots and wooded lots that you're working with tight access? That's the only thing I could think of that would restrict us. If we did a lot of access lots this year, we're like, it was freaking tight, you know?
Well, so think about how much room you have, right? If you got room to get an excavator in and swing that thing around, you got room to get a loader in there.
Yeah.
Most houses we do, probably with you guys too, you have 10 feet minimum around the house. Some are more than that, so you can get a loader all the way around, no problem. And a loader, you'd be surprised, like you can get a loader in pretty tight spots, and they're so much more efficient than a skid loader. But the skid loader is great because you can clean up your job site with them. But we found now to where, we have that grading bucket on our loader. Man, that crew hardly ever has a skid loader with them because having that grading bucket on that loader, you can see it's just like a big skid loader. So it's really kind of nice to have that grading bucket. People make fun of me because I have that bucket and I have all this stuff, and I'm just like, dude, don't knock it till you try it because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think that that's a cool thing apart about like seeing other people and like in this day and age in construction at least being able to see like different ways and listening to different people and how they go about the same style projects but in a completely different way. Like my second podcast I ever did was with the digger man, and he's talking about how like they don't use like loaders or skid steers over there that much, and it's mainly these little site dump trucks with tracks on them, to like move stuff around. And it's just cool the comparison, and I think that that's what's cool about Con Expo as well, is that it's kind of like you get to talk to all these people and to listen to different ways of doing it. I'm sure since you've been, to the first one, I mean, you have experience going. I'm sure that just the people that you get to talk to and the people that you see and the conversations that you have makes you think a different way. Like talking to you today, it's completely like I see. I'm not just saying this because of the podcast, but I'm seriously like a 3.5 yard loader might be kind of cool to try it on the next job site and like call up the local dealer and be like, hey, like let me demo one and let's just see how it goes, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of what we do, right?
Yeah.
You can't really go out and test drive a car for 40 hours, right? Or for 10 hours, right? You
Run
got
it through the mud.
Yeah, go drive the car around a little bit and then be done with it. It's one of those things where the loaders, like nowadays, like things are getting so advanced, right? Like Volvo and Caterpillar, they have like onboard scales available in that loader that comes from the factory. Dude, to have that is amazing. And like like the cat excavators, they have it right there in the machine. They'll tell you exactly what you're weighing out. I mean, that's huge. And I was loading out trucks one day and with a hoe, a 335 cat, and these guys were getting mad at me because they're like, "You're loading it too heavy." I says, "Come here," and they're like, "What?" And I says, "Come here, I'm gonna show you how much you weigh." He's like, "Oh, you got a scale in there?" I says, "Yeah." I says, "What's your weight? What you good for? 30, 31, 32 ton?" He's like, "Yeah, like 32, 32 and a half." I had like 32.8 in him,
Nice.
and I'm like, "There you go." He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm not gonna argue with you anymore." You know, and like I don't think that these manufacturers really understand how important it is to have something like that in a machine, and like with load right scales coming out, and Trimble figuring that all that stuff out, I mean, putting that into the machine, is it's a game changer. It's unreal.
Well, every brand does now, like I saw got a pushed an ad the other day by Komatsu, and like I know like Cat and John Deere had their own kind of like built in on the screens, but Komatsu came out and they're having their own scale systems and grade systems built into their excavators as well too. And I think that you're right. Like I don't know if they understand how valuable it is because you being able to track your quantities throughout the day and even preset and save each single truck like, oh, truck 4 took this many tons today versus truck 18 took this many tons today. Like that stuff's really cool and useful to break down at the end of a project.
Yeah, it's unreal. It's one of those things where technology is coming so far along that, man, if the next generation machines that don't have that type of stuff, it's like, man, how much longer before you get that, right? You got some of these other guys out there that have it, and if you don't have it yet, you really need to have it. Like grading systems. I get into a machine that doesn't have any type of grading system, and I'm like, dude, what am I do with this? You know, give me a grading system in this thing, because if I want to dig that hole over there and I want to be 3 feet deep, I know exactly how far 3 feet deep is by the push of a button.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that, like, once you learn the technology, you embrace it. You embrace it wholeheartedly, because you understand how much better it can make you, and more how much more efficient it can make you.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And these are conversations that I want to continue as well. You're going to be at Con Expo in March, Ryan?
Yeah, yeah, we will be.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get to talk to you in person about this stuff and kind of like get everybody else to continue on the conversations of technology and leadership and owning a business and all the other stuff that's kind of going on. But I want to save some for the show as well too. So I'll we've been chatting for an hour now, even though it doesn't feel like an hour at all. But I know that there's more value that we can pull from you. So I can't wait to see you in March at Con Expo. And I want to thank you for coming on today, Ryan, on the podcast brought to you by Komatsu, everybody. Thank you to our supporters at Komatsu. And thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Thanks, Taylor. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Con with Conag and AEM for having me. It was awesome.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. We are less than 100 days from the 2023 show. That's right. We are coming up on the largest construction family reunion in North America. Con Expo Conag is going to be here before we know it. If you have not registered yet, there's still time to secure your tickets. Visit conexpoconag.com and use the promo code podcast20 to get 20% off. That's right, 20% off with promo code podcast20. If you already have your tickets to the show, join us in the countdown to the show and comment below to let us know you're going to be there and what you're most excited to see. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Con Expo Conag podcast that is brought to you by our good friends over at Komatsu. We'll catch you on the next one.